my feel-good breakfast show.
Well, a very good morning and welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show live on SABC3 on this Tuesday morning. Now, world leaders have gathered for the two-day G20 Summit of the world's major economies, where global economic challenges and global security are on the agenda. Now, joining us this morning to make sense of all of this is Professor Mark Ellyne. Good morning, Professor. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, I think most people do know that the G20 consists of about 85% of the world economy, so a large contingent of the world countries that are participating in this summit. Why is it so important to have so many countries as part of it?
Yes. Look, this G20 is actually an informal organization where it's sort of like an old boys club where the richest people get a chance to sit around the table and meet. And the fact that South Africa is there is, in fact, very important. But let me give you an example of the relative size of the countries that we're talking about. Certainly, most of these, these 20 countries are more or less the 20 richest countries, starting with something like the United States, which is $18 trillion. But South Africa, in fact, is the smallest country represented at the G20. It's not the 20th richest country. It's more like it's somewhere between 30 and 35, depending on the exchange rate. And last year, it had a GDP of about $300 billion. Now, that's $300 billion compared to $18 trillion.
Yeah.
So we're talking about big differences.
Vast gaps, yes.
And even Brazil is like $1.5 trillion. So South Africa is sitting at a big table with a lot of rich guys and get a chance to represent Africa and hear what's going on and express its views.
Yeah, but why not get more world economies involved, since we are addressing global economic challenges? Have more countries represented then? Why only the G20?
Well, I think you answered the question when you said it's 85% of the world is sitting in the hands of 20 countries.
Wow. So,
in fact, it becomes more and more unwieldy when more countries are involved. And in the old days, to show the progress that has been made by going to the G20, there used to be something called the G7, which were the 7 richest countries who would sit around the table, and it was felt they were making decisions for the world economy without any other representation. So in fact, the IMF and World Bank has moved towards making this G20 sort of the key, let's say, policy forum for discussion about these global issues.
Yeah.
So that's widened the scale dramatically, and in that G20, we see a lot of emerging markets. These are going to be people like Turkey, Australia may not be an emerging market, but Indonesia, South Africa. So now you're bringing in Korea, the emerging market countries, to share in this world of what's going on in the world economy.
yeah. What big decisions have been made in the past G20 summits that have really had a big impact on the world economies? And what can we expect possibly from this one?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing that happened was in 2008 and 2009, we had this global financial crisis.
Yeah.
And in terms of how to address that, that was dealt with in a context of the G20. There was a big injection of money. There was lots of government spending, this relaxation of interest rates, which is still playing out today. Today we see a range of issues. Remember, this is primarily economic, but not only. We see big migration problems coming out of the Middle East and the Syrian war. We just saw the UK leave the EU. This might have repercussions not only for the EU, but for the UK, but who knows if other countries may want to follow. So there's a number of issues like that. Even in Africa, we've had the results of a drought from El Nino in many countries, and this concerns the rest of the world. So I think we're looking at this, probably the migration and Brexit are probably the two foremost issues on the sort of agenda to see how things are going to play out. And also, people always hear about the United States. We call it normalization of interest rates, going back to normal business. And then there's a bit of worry about where the capital is flowing in the world.
Maybe the bigger worry is that will Trump become president? Do you think that will be on the agenda?
Go. Well, you know, this actually raises another interesting issue. There's a lot of people who are not happy with globalization in the world, who feel that it hasn't treated them well. And I think the Brexit shows just that in the UK, and probably Donald Trump represents a similar sort of element in the United States of people who may feel disenfranchised or not benefit from this globalization, which has been certainly a predominant trend in the world economy.
Professor, thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's all we have time for. But no doubt it will be one of the trending topics throughout the internet. We'll be following, of course, over the next couple of days. Professor Mark Ellyne, Adjunct Associate Professor of Economics at UCT, talking to us about the G20 Summit. Right now, let's catch up on the headlines of the morning. Here's Leanne.
Only you can make my day.